Hello and welcome to BBDD's Dungeons and Dragons. So today I'm just going to cover some tools that I find quite handy for setting up games and for running games. There are three different, one tool and two sites that I use every now and again for when I'm either running a game or developing kind of elements and monsters and encounters for my games. They're fairly easy to use, but really do help organize the system and allow you to kind of think about setting up new monsters or setting up new encounters and events in a different way, and kind of allowing you to be a bit more creative and also stick within the structure of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So we'll start off with an online dice roller, which is on a site called brockjones.com/dice or die roller/dice.htm. Now, I don't think this guy has got an up-to-date SSL security for his site, like a security certificate. So when you come to the site, it will throw up this warning, warning you that your connection is not private and you shouldn't put any sensitive information in. The site doesn't ask for any sensitive information, so you're in no risk anyway, but there is an option, which I'll show you in a minute, at the bottom of the site where you can actually download the site and use it offline anyway. So if you are concerned about the security, you only have to visit this site just the one time, and then once you've downloaded it, you can use it just from your own PC. So if you're using the Chrome browser, then all you have to do to get past this warning is just the advanced button and then proceed to Brock Jones unsafe, and it is warning you that it is unsafe. And again, if you don't feel like using it because you're worried about the security, that's fine, but I don't believe that this security warning is anything other than just the site owner hasn't got a up-to-date SSL certificate. And since the site asks for no sensitive information anyway, I don't think it's a risk. Anyway, this is the online die roller, and it is exactly what it says on the tin. It is an online die roller. It has lots of built-in features, which are really, really handy. So it's got quick rollers for all the kinds of dice you'd need for tabletop gaming. So you can just click on those and it shows up in the roll history as to what you get. And they're, randomized. I don't know what programming uses for randomization, but it seems to be fairly randomized. You've got a section where you can save rolls that you've kind of custom made yourself, which I'll show you in a minute. And this is the full roll section, which is where you can actually customize your rolls. So you do the number of dice you want to roll. So let's say 2 times 1d6s. Then you can add a modifier onto each one of those rolls or onto the whole roll. Now, I made a mistake when I was using this the first time, because if you say doing a weapon that does 2d6 damage plus 3 because of strength or dexterity, for example, I was putting the plus 3 into here, which would then add plus 3 onto every single one of the rolls of those d6s. So it would be roll 1d6, add 3 to it, roll another d6, add 3 to it. Whereas what I wanted to do was add plus 3 to the end result, which, as you can see down at the bottom, this is the bit that I really like, is that it actually shows you the maximum number this number of dice can roll, the minimum number, and the median. So you can actually start to balance things out. So when I was developing monsters or weapons for a kind of custom setting that I was trying to build a while ago based on the Doom computer game, I could figure out how much damage the weapons I was creating could potentially do. So I could balance it with the amount of health that I'd given the players and the amount of health I'd given the monsters. So I could see that, okay, well, this gun in, say, 2 hits could kill an average enemy if it got full damage, but the average is going to maybe take 4 hits or something like that. So it's a really handy tool for figuring out new weapons or new powers. Like if you're coming up with a custom magical weapon, for example, you could figure out, okay, I want it to do, let's say, 4 1d8. And the guy could get a +2 on his strength, so you can see that it'll do, or actually you could even get rid of the modifier altogether and just see the basics there. So a weapon doing 4d8, obviously you can calculate it yourself, but it's a lot quicker to look at it here. And you can even then save this custom roll and name it Magical Weapon 1, for example. And then it will get added to your saved rolls, and you can just quickly roll it up, and it shows you the calculation, it shows you what it gets, and it shows you the techniques there. So that's really handy thing for creating new content for your games, creating new settings, and coming up with all the equipment and weapons and health and all sorts of things quickly and easily. You can kind of figure out, let's say, for example, if you really wanted your characters to have, say, 50 health points, and you wanted to figure out how many d8s it would require to get up to 50, you can start calculating that just by that. So we can see that a full roll of 8 1d8s has a median of 36 and a maximum of 64. So let's knock that down by 1, 56, knock down by another, 48. So let's say you wanted a max health for your characters of around 50. You could give them 6 d8s as their hit dice, and then you would know it would be within the range of what you wanted. And you could either plus it or minus it depending on how much you wanted, what much leeway you wanted to give them one way or the other. The other really handy thing that this site has at the very bottom is the stat roll. So you can choose the type of stat roll you want for when you're coming up with ability scores. Let's do the standard of 46, drop the lowest, roll it, and it'll come up with all a array of ability scores, nice and easy. Personally, I really like actually rolling the physical dice when coming up with ability scores, but if you are, for example, coming up with just a character quickly for an NPC, or for just something to add a bit of flavor to the game, or just a player who didn't really want to be bothered with making their character, you could just whip one up real quick, and this gives you a nice range of things. You can see the last one's total was 81, this one is 67, so it shows you the averages of each total and how much of a modifier it gets. So it gives you all the information you could possibly need. Like this one, a plus 95 total with a plus 15, so that's a bit of a god. And then, as I mentioned down before, right down here, you can download an offline version of this page, which will then mean you can avoid the security warnings if that makes you uncomfortable. And you can use all the functionality of the page just from your own desktop. And it is a really handy thing. It's good for actually when you're running a game, you can actually use it as a dice rolling system if you want. And it's also, but it's where it really shines for me anyway, is where you use it to figure out new items, new powers, new abilities, and see the potential of dice rolls. Because some people probably with much better grasp of mathematics than I have will probably be able to figure that out themselves. But I find it really useful to be able to just use this site to actually look at, okay, well, if this weapon does 2d10 and the guy's got a modifier of +3, what is his actual potential, or what is this monster's potential damage going to be? And if I know my players are, say, level 3, for example, so their health is somewhere around 20 to 30, I know that this creature can maybe hit them perfectly twice, and that's going to wipe them out completely. And it's a good way of actually physically seeing what challenge rating means and what certain monsters are capable of doing. Like their super attacks might be enough to kill a person outright, as in wipe out their health bar and then put it into minus their full health bar. And it's very useful to be able to know just what the potential of these things are. And it's particularly useful for coming up with enhanced weapons or magical weapons, so that you're not breaking your own game by saying, oh, that's a really cool idea, I'll give it a this plus, and then not realizing that that plus is going to basically make a super weapon which your player is going to use to destroy everything. So that's the first site, the online die roller, brockjones.com. I'll put links up to everything. The second one we're going to go to is another one that I've only just discovered, the D&D 5e stat block generator, which is on tetracube.com. Now, this site has a load of really cool things. It has a magic item generator, a character generator, which I haven't played around with much, but is pretty incredible. So the magic item generator allows you to literally generate a magic item following the rules on the Dungeon Master's Guide or following rules made by the site creator. Again, I haven't played around with it much, but it looks really nicely done. The character generator is incredible. It comes up with a picture, it comes up with names, it does races, classes. It's incredibly complex and deep and impressively designed. Again, I haven't played with it much, but I think it will be well worth looking at if you want to quickly create characters for NPCs or something, or even just coming up with random player characters might be an interesting way of running a game. But the stat block generator is what I want to kind of discuss today, because I've only just started to really use this, but I think it's going to be a really, really useful tool for basically running any games, because it allows you to very quickly gather up a repository of stat blocks for your monsters that you're going to use within that game. So, for example, here I've got a folder which has a collection of a whole bunch of stat blocks, not only of monsters from the actual monster manual, but from other PDFs, from other creators, and from just ones that I've just developed myself. And I can gather them all up and you can output them. So, for example, here on the site, I've got the bandit up, which is just from the monster manual, and I can output them as a PNG image, which will then generate it, and it looks exactly like it does from the monster manual. It's just that one image, so you can see it just on its own. So you could set those aside in a folder ready for whatever game you're going to play, and you would have all the stats for the monsters that the players are likely to encounter right there ready to access. And you wouldn't have to flip through a book, you wouldn't have to scroll through a PDF. It'd be really quick access. You can also save the stat block, so whenever you're making a new monster or adding a monster in from a PDF that isn't in the big list, that there are presets within this as well. So I've picked the preset of the bandit. There is all the 5th edition SRD monsters to choose from, priests, bonies, anything. You click on them, they all load up. There's also the Cobalt Press Tome of Beasts monsters are all available here as well. So you can, again, load any of those up. So there's lots of lovely presets, but if you're adding one that isn't on the list, then it's always a good idea to save the stat block out, and this saves it as its own custom .monster file type, which you can then load back into the site so that you can edit them live later if you've made a mistake and you want to edit it. You can also do it as a printable block, which makes it just in black and white with no graphics, so it's easier or cheaper to print. And you can view the code of the thing as well if that's useful, but that's just for the code that the site is using. Now, to get into the actual nuts and bolts of how this thing works, you've got the layout, which is much like any monster stat block from the manuals or from the monster manual itself. You can then edit the name, the size, the type, the race. Any of these fields can be altered. So let's say we turn this guy into a knife bandit, and then we click update stat block, and immediately it changes the name, as you can see there. You can also then customize the hit dice. At the moment, the bandit has 11 hit points, and that's generated from 2d8 plus 2. You can change the number of hit dice. It all seems to be based on d8s. And perhaps that, I haven't actually noticed this before, but maybe in the monster manual, all monster hit dice are based on d8s. I don't know how it's calculating the pluses, but you can, if that doesn't fit for the monster that you're creating, like if you're borrowing one from another PDF and you want to just mimic what hit dice has been given in that, you can then do custom hit dice and then type in the values you want and the amount that reached it. Or you could use the online die roller and figure out the max, medium, and analyze it yourself. Same thing with the armor type. So it's a live adaptive armor type. So for example, here the dexterity bonus for this bandit is +1. The armor type selected is leather, which creates a total armor class of 12 because the leather armor gives you 11, the dexterity gives you +1. If we upped that dexterity bonus to +2, kept the armor as leather, updated it, it becomes 13. So it live calculates depending on the stats of your creature. You can also add a shield, and then it'll tell you 15 leather armor plus a shield, and it shows you the benefit that has come from. You can add custom armor if you want. If you do other, that allows you to then specify. You can literally just type in anything. But it does also have all the other things like mage armor and chain shirts and all that sort of thing. You can then alter the speed of the creature from all the different types of speed, and again, a custom speed. The stat blocks, the stat ability scores, can be altered, and these figure into the various calculations for weapon damage later on. You can add saving throws. You can also give the monster proficiencies with certain things. So let's say this guy's good at stealth. Give him a proficiency in stealth, and it will update, and it figures out that his proficiency bonus is +2. He's got a +2 for dexterity, creating a +4 for the stealth. The proficiency bonus is based on the challenge rating, which you can up as well. So a 12 challenge rating gets a +4. Let's keep him down at a 1. You can add languages, conditions. You can have vulnerabilities, resistances, or immunities. Let's make him resistant to slashing damage. You can choose between proficiency and expert. Expert basically doubles the bonus. So let's say he's an expert in athletics. Give him that, gives it a little expert thing. We update it, and it shows that his athletics is +4 for his expertise and +1 for his strength. And then we get on to the really exciting bit, which is the abilities, actions, and reactions. Now, you've got options here to add your own or to use presets, much like picking the monsters. So if we add a dagger based on dexterity, use preset, it gives you the name there with the dagger, the type of weapon, all the information there. These little bits of code here, the dex attack, the dex 1d4, these are bits of code that you can see clarified here. And this is so that the site will actually calculate these for you, so you don't even have to calculate the abilities or the numbers because it will figure it out for you. So if we add the action of using a dagger, you see it appears there in the list. These are the two that were already there for being a bandit. And we scroll back up and update stat block. It shows that he's got a +4 to hit, which is based on his dexterity and his proficiency. He's got the reach and everything. The hit is 4, 1d4 +2. And we can see that here, these bits of code are what is informing the site to build that. And that's not the only things as well it has. It has all the weapons for you to use as presets. It also has lots of standard monster abilities to add in. So let's say this guy's got keen hearing, for example. We can use that preset, and it shows the monster. Again, that's a bit of code. Has advantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on hearing. Add that as an ability, pops up in a new section. We update the stat block, and there we have a new ability. And it all keeps it in the same format and the same look as a monster manual item. And this really is super easy to use, but really powerful because it can allow you to quickly come up with stat blocks and quickly organize them either in a digital or an easily printable format. And then you'll be able to just whip those out and use them in combat or in your games whenever you need them. On top of that, there's a game that I played in recently where the DM had a really good idea in that whenever combat started, the NPCs and the followers of the party that he was running out of combat, he would hand us the kind of monster stat blocks for those NPCs so that the players could then run the NPCs during combat. This not only took a lot of pressure off him so that he could focus on the monsters, it drew the players more into the tactics of the combat, because we were then responsible for whether this NPC lived or died or sacrificed themselves or fought well or fought badly. And it made the combat much more engaging for players and much more tense in a lot of ways. And I think as a technique, I'm going to probably start implying that much more, because it allows me to then focus on the monsters and make it much more of a much easier process for battle, and I think much more engaging for the players. And with this stat block generator, you can then very quickly and easily print out or load up digital versions of the stat blocks, hand them to your players, and allow them to run that side of the combat. So it's, again, a really great site, really good resource, easy to use, and will greatly improve your speed prepping for games, what you can do in games, and how much fun you'll have. So the final one I want to talk about is Softrope, which can be found by searching for Softrope RPG Soundscape Mixer. And it's free to use. You can donate, which I would strongly recommend you do, because it's a really cool tool. It's a very simple site. It's about page and everything. The thing I want to draw your attention to, though, is why is it named Softrope, which I particularly find entertaining. So I wanted a word that would be fairly unique, yet still RPG D&D related. You're not the only one in DM who's had this happen, where rope was required. Player: I've got some soft rope. Will that do? DM: what the hell? Soft rope? Player: here on my equipment I've written rope. Soft. DM looks closely. DM slaps player. At the end of the day, it was a choice between soft rope or 50-foot boots. So again, it's just, I think, quite an entertaining little idea that rather than 50 foot of rope, somebody has identified it as soft rope. Hence the rather odd, but I think appropriate name. Anyway, so this is Soft Rope. It's very easy to download, very small program. It's a beta, but it's pretty functional. And it's basically a soundscape editor. There are a couple of different ways of approaching doing sounds. I'll quickly show as well. Tabletop audio. So it's another site which is really great. If you don't want to use a system on your own machine, then this works perfectly well. It's got a huge amount of sound environments, which are all about 10 minutes long. They can be downloaded. They can be played straight through the site, like so. You've got an actual player where you can pause it, play it, stop it, change the volume, tell it to loop. They've also just added a new thing, which is the sound pad, which is even more incredible. And you can open up multiples of these, and let's say Dark Forest and Old Town, for example. And once they load, they don't just give you sound environments like background sound effects. They actually give you little short sound effects as well in a variety of different control systems. So let's say we've got strong wind, for example. We can have a strong wind going. We can add a horse cart into it. We can tell it to loop, or we can tell it to change how it plays. So example, the owl here, you can tell it to repeat it. You can tell it to repeat every 2 minutes, for example. This is really cool for creating a kind of dynamic background, because if you have lots of things on different repeat delays, then as you're playing, you kind of lose track of time. You don't know when they're kicking off. So you might hear the owl come up and then a wolf howl come up every few minutes. And it can make a really cool environment that you can slowly build up. And you can mix the two. It's got music as well. So you've got action music if you want. And it fades in and out. You've got elven flutes. So it's a really great site just as a sound system all on its own. If you want to do it online and the internet's fine and all that sort of thing, you got no problems with that, then it's a great thing to use. But if you want to do it more on your own system, then I would strongly recommend getting hold of Softrope. Again, very lightweight little program. You can download it, pop a link to your desktop. There we go. There's our wolf. Very atmospheric. and then it'll happen every 15 seconds and create a nice effect, and it shows you when it's playing or not. So I shall just stop me all as well. So from the tabletop audio site, for example, if you go to the ambiences, you can choose to save any one of these onto your machine. Once you save them, you can just play them through VLC or Media Player or whatever you want, or you can load them into something like SoftRope. So if I load a module here, and it thinks about it for a moment, I'll pick one of my other ones that I've used already. So let's say we go for this one, and it'll load. That'll not respond for a little while. Then it'll load. There we go. Okay, so you've got a big list of scenes here. Now the scenes can be customized in a number of different ways. Usually I just stick one sound in there, but you can fit multiple sounds in and make little soundscapes. But with just one sound, you can then mix them together. So let's show an example of this. So we've got the plane sound effect, which is one of the ones, if I double click on the scene, it's 96, the windswept plains, which is one of the sounds from tabletop audio. And I've popped this in here into a scene all on its own. So if I just click it, it will start playing, and you can hear the windswept plane thing, and you can hear that it fades in and it fades out when you click, and you can change the settings on that. So I've got a fade in and fade out of 4 seconds. You can change how long or short that is just by clicking on it. You can also change whether it loops or not. So I do want that to loop, for example, so that once it gets to the end, it's a 10-minute long sound effect, but obviously games go on for a long time, so you want it probably to loop. So I tend to turn them all on to loop. Then you can also change the volume of the individual sound effect, or the master volume of the whole scene. And then click it and it plays. And the really cool thing about this, rather than having multiple players up, you can play multiple things on top of itself. So let's say we go for adding a war horn in there. Or we want to add some music. So now you've still got the plane sound effect, but you now also have the music on top of it. And this can be really great for creating whole sound environments. So if I load one of my other modules up, which is a sci-fi one, I can show you an idea of what I'm talking about there. Because I was trying to create a kind of factory ambience for an industrial section, and I won't say much because it's probably going to get loud, but this is 3 different sound effects kind of layered on top of each other to create a really great ambience for a factory environment. And we can drop certain elements off to change the environment within it. And you can even then add sounds on top of it, music, to slowly change the environment around. You can even intensify from building up tension to full-on combat, for example. And even quite different pieces of music can work well together because you can just fade in between them. So it's a really cool tool for mixing and matching different sounds together and allowing you to create this kind of much more dynamic sound environment. It can be easy to get a bit distracted with this because it can do so much. You can kind of get a bit lost building modules and sounds and creating a whole environment. It can get a bit much, but as a tool just to kind of have in the background, it makes life a lot easier, because being able to just stick on some travel music when you're on a travel in between somewhere, or just to click on a quick bit of combat when you need it, when something kicks off, and you can whack on some combat music right away. It allows you to do that. It's also really nice to have like themed music for different environments. So when you arrive at a particular village or city, it's a good idea to have a nice specific song sitting there so that you can give that town a real feel and a real personality, for example. I have a good one somewhere. Eldorel. And you can, what I tend to do is I'll hunt around through different video game soundtracks or films or TV series. And if you find a particular one that you feel speaks about that particular town or that particular environment, then just grab it, convert it from YouTube, put it on your desktop, and then load it into Softrope. And just to give you an idea of how the system actually works, we can do new scene. You can name it pretty easily. So test 1. Double click on it, click on the little folder, go to your sound folder. Let's select weirder things. I tend to knock the volume down, pop it onto loop, give it a fade out of 3 seconds, and that's you pretty much done. That's all you really need to do. Click it, and it will fade in, and there you've got your music. Really quick, really easy. You can have a huge amount of sounds layered on top of each other. You probably don't want to go too many more than 3, but you can. Doesn't sound very good, but it shows you just what it can do. And then you can obviously save your module, and this saves the whole selection of all the different scenes. So a really cool program. There's probably actually a lot more to it that I haven't discovered, like having multiple sounds on top of each other, for example. I've only got one example of that to show, which is again in this. So if we go, this sound effect is just a kind of horror sound effect there. But I made a module which has 2 sounds, which is kind of for a specific scene, where it starts with this kind of horror sound effect, and then a few seconds in, it will play a bit of music. Now, I could just do that myself and play the bit of music, but what I'm hoping to do when I'm describing this scene is when I get to the kind of horror part of the scene, the bit of Mozart will start playing, and so it kind of layers into it, and I don't have to be clicking around. I just have to be describing the scene for my players, and then they will hear the music slowly swell. And you can make some really cool moments like that, which will really enhance your game. So yes, that was my quick review of 3 different tools. Again, there'll be links and everything dotted around for on the description, and I'll pop up a title card just now. There are 3 really cool sites that I would highly recommend having a look at. 4 actually, including tabletop audio. The stat block generator is something that I'm going to be using a lot more of in my games to come, to help make combat more dynamic and to help organize my combat and organize the monsters that the players will face. Softrope is something I use with every one of my campaigns. I always have Softrope up because it's something that allows you to easily access music without having multiple programs up, without having YouTube pages up, without having problems with repeats or adverts popping up. It's just straight up music. It's very low impact on your system, and it's very easy to use. And then the online die roller is just a really handy tool. It's something that will free up your creativity so that you can create unique magical items, unique weapons, unique monsters, and just generally free you up to create more freely when you're designing your games. So thank you for watching. I hope this was informative, and I shall try to work on another video much quicker than before, and let's hope that 2020 keeps on rolling. Be well, and catch you in the next video. Thank you for watching.